1997. It's part of a larger crackdown on Hong Kong's news media that Tom Grundy knows well. He's the founder and director of the Hong Kong Free Press.
Well, prosecutors said that Stand News had sought to incite hatred against the authorities through 17 articles published between 2020 and 2021. Thing is, these articles weren't editorials, but interviews with activists, opinion pieces by Democrats, a feature about the protests, and even a hard news piece about an activist winning a rights prize. Today, 11 of those 17 articles were found to be seditious, mostly op-eds. Throughout this trial, prosecutors have said this content promoted radical political ideologies, and now they may face 2 years in prison.
And so Stand News is accused of providing a platform for sedition. Is that right? What are the specific laws that the news organization is being accused of breaking?
Well, this is a colonial-era law that has rarely been used, and it is the first time it's been used against journalists in post-colonial Hong Kong. In fact, it was revamped early this year with the advent of a second security law that now sees up to 7 years in prison, or 10 years if foreign forces are involved. And this new Article 23 that was just passed will mean that this duo, if they go to prison and the sentencing is in September, they will not be eligible for any early release. Unclear yet what kind of sentence they will got, but in mitigation today, they pleaded that they just be released at this stage, having spent about a year in prison already.
So you said that people went to Stand News for its independent coverage. It has been since shut down. What was it known for, and why did it shutter?
Well, Stand was launched in the aftermath of the 2014 Umbrella Movement protests. Independent, reader-funded, but also pro-democracy slanted. It rose to prominence during the 2019 protests and unrest, and it just became the go-to news site for demonstrators for the movement. Now, COVID-19 restrictions and a new security law in 2020 saw those protests quashed, and Stand was raided a year later. 200 national security police entered their newsroom. Almost $9 million US dollars worth of assets were frozen, and Stand News just deleted their website entirely in the hours that followed.
So this is just the latest in a string of crackdowns on the free press in Hong Kong. What do you think this particular conviction means for press freedoms and for freedom of expression there?
Well, we know about the Jimmy Lai case in Hong Kong.
Jimmy Lai is the high-profile owner of the Apple Daily newspaper who's currently on trial, correct?
Yes, so this isn't the only high-profile press freedom case in the city at the moment. Jimmy Lai, the founder of another newsroom that was raided by hundreds of police officers years ago, is facing up to life in prison under the national security law, which is quite different to this colonial-era sedition law. And that is probably coming to a head in the next few months as well. But to be honest, it is this case that we in the media locally have been waiting to hear about, because it will certainly have an impact on every newsroom in the city. The judgment somewhat clarifies where some of the red lines were. Even the top national security police officer said that today. But every newsroom, including ours, will have to consider who's writing for them, what they're writing, and perhaps get legal advice, because as much as they say this clarifies the law, it's still very unclear, I would say, as to what is allowed and what isn't.
What do you think that increased caution or increased looking for legal clarification will actually mean day to day in, for example, your operations? How will that change your coverage?
Our ability to report on the local daily news, we will find a way to do it. We will get the news out. We have a very dedicated team of 8. But we admit that we have reined in the opinion section and features, particularly as this case has been ongoing and the law has been so unclear. But you know, this is an era now in the last 4 or 5 years that has seen about 10 media outlets closed, over 1,000 journalists put out of work, and the government-funded broadcaster RTHK adopting new editorial guidelines and purging its archives and axing news and satirical shows. So as much as the city's leader, John Lee, says that press freedom is in the pocket of Hong Kongers and it's intact, I must admit that much of my day is spent trying to understand and navigate these red lines and steer us through.
Tom, are people in the news business right now in Hong Kong forced to kind of self-censor given the legal environment you're operating in?
If you look at any survey by the local Journalists Association or any press freedom NGO, you will see that self-censorship is certainly rife, and the media spectrum in Hong Kong is dominated by titles that are outright owned by China, owned by people with business interests in the mainland, or by Chinese conglomerates. And there's very little in terms of independent media left. We are arguably the only ones left in English, and there's a smattering of tiny outlets in Chinese as well. But self-censorship has always been an issue, whether that be because of ownership, but certainly it happens every day in every newsroom in Hong Kong. It's very difficult to monitor or see because a lot of the time it's omission or things just being edited to death until the story goes away.
So that's something you all are grappling with each day, this self-censorship.
Well, like I say, for the daily news, we are generally able to get it out. We have to be careful about headlines. We're certainly very strict about our impartiality and getting both sides in there. And we may await a government response, but we can just about do it. And that's why we justify remaining in Hong Kong. But I have to admit, features and opinion pieces, particularly after this verdict, that's a lot spicier. And we have to be a lot more selective when it comes to that kind of coverage.
Tom Grundy is the founder and director of the Hong Kong Free Press and spoke to us from Hong Kong.